Hey y'all, aloha. It's Daniel Aaron here. I'm so excited to be with my good friend, old friend, David Avocado Wolfe, and we decided we got so much to talk about. Let's invite y'all to join in on the conversation. David, good to see you, brother. Thank you for being here.
Great to see you, bro. How are you?
So good, it's probably illegal somewhere.
Oh, I'd say it's probably illegal right here in America these days.
No, I'm in Hawaii, so we're not part of America, brah.
Mm, right. That's just an occupying it's an occupying government at this point.
It's a funny place, yeah. Life is good. How are you? What's the word over there? You're in Houston at the moment, yeah?
Yes, and I was just out watering the plants, and I've been watering the plants for weeks with no trouble, and I stepped on a scorpion and got stung on the bottom of my foot, and I immediately applied charcoal, and I just got the charcoal off my hands. They're not too bad. I think mostly they're clean now, but it worked, and it's working. That was about probably, I don't know, 75 minutes ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that just tells you, I mean, right now there's no throbbing. And if I had to define what's going on, it feels like I have a little piece of glass in my foot. That's where we're at now.
That's awesome. I
So
mean, not that you have
water and
not that
charcoal,
it,
just so for everybody's wondering, if you get stung by a wasp or anything, water and charcoal. And I did one time, Daniel, when I was up at Avalon, I did get stung in the eyeball by a wasp.
wow.
And that was a similar thing to what happened today. Felt similar, a little bit more intense today. I would say that was a little bit more, scorpion's a little bit more electrical. But the best thing to do is I just put water on my finger, put that in charcoal, put it in my eye, directly on my eyeball, and that sorted that out in about 20 minutes. So much so that within, I don't know, a half hour, maybe it was an hour, I can't quite remember. It's been a few years now. I was able to drive away.
That's amazing. Well, and I'm glad you put it in the context because it's so valuable for people to know that when something happens, we don't necessarily have to, and probably don't want to, go to some authority in a white coat. That there's probably in our home, especially if we, are smart about it and have things like charcoal, probably a remedy right there for us, right?
Yes, always. That's why it's so important to continue to educate yourself about health, because there's just simple things like this thing. If I did not immediately do what I just did on my foot right there, right now I'd have my legs up on a wall. I wouldn't even be able to do this call. They'd be like pulsing and throbbing, and it probably would affect me for 3 to 4 hours, if not longer. And we've almost quenched it here in 75 minutes. So that's just the power of just continuing to look. And sure, I could have done other things on my foot. I could have done another strategy. Maybe I could have tried to suck the poison out or whatever, put iodine on it, put silver on it, and all those things probably would have been good to some degree, but the charcoal works the best.
That's awesome. Well, and I'll tell you a quick story of a similar occurrence I had, though without going too far into the science, and I know you could go really far into the science, would you say why does that work? What does charcoal do that made such a big difference?
Charcoal is a tremendous drawing agent, and it tends to attract to itself things that have a different charge than the natural biology of a human being, a mammal, a reptile, a fish. Any living thing actually can benefit from charcoal as a detoxification agent, both internally and topically. And I stumbled into it, really, Daniel. I got to tell you, you know how long I've been at this. It's somewhere around 20, I don't know, 2015. That's when I really went headlong into the charcoal research, and I was amazed. I was shocked. It's so simple. It's so obvious. It's so basic. It's so original, and it's so available to anyone. And I was like, it's a universal cure. And that's why I take charcoal every day. In fact, not only did I put it topically on, but I took about 6 or 7 capsules, that's about 2,500 milligrams of charcoal, just because you want to clean your blood out. You don't want that thing to go deeper into your body, and it's working right now. It's definitely not going deeper into my body. It's being drawn out, and even as I'm speaking to you right now, it's getting better and better and better. I'm really happy with what happened.
That's cool. Yeah, and I start every day with charcoal, lemon water, and I learned that from you, and I'm super grateful for it. Um, so here's what happened to me. Some years ago, I was living in Bali. I was driving on my motorbike through Ubud, the area, right? And as I'm driving, I'm like, ow, ow, ow. And I look down at my hand, and there's a big old centipede on my hand. As I'm driving the motorbike through traffic, So I'm like, and I take my hand, I'm like, like trying to throw it off, but it was in and it was not coming off. So there's nothing I could do because if I tried to do, I was on the motorbike, it was dangerous. So I had to wait probably at least 20, 30 seconds before I had a safe pullover. And then I finally got it off. And I was like, oh man, it hurts so much. And what am I going to do? And so I thought, I guess I got to just go home and see what I can do with this. So it's about a 10-minute drive to get home. I get there, and I kid you not, this hand had ballooned up. I mean, it was gross, and it was like 3 times the size of my other hand. And so I'm like, the first thought I had was like, all right, there's got to be essential oils that are going to help this. And at the time, I had this big lab full of essential oils. And so I went in to my computer. I'm like, I'm not even sure which ones are going to be good for this. And so I go to my computer to start researching. I had to like use my other hand to click because I couldn't even move the hand. Figured it out, got like 4 essential oils, went over to my little lab, put them on there, rubbed it around, and in 15 minutes, my hands looked like the same size. I was astounded.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
It was
That's
super cool.
incredible. Whoa. So this centipede was one of the big kind then. It had like literally burrowed into you. Do you remember which 4 essential oils those were?
Which what?
Which essential oils that you used?
Oh, yeah, because I make sure I always keep them around. I don't know roughly, but I know that the types of oils. It would have been clove, tea tree, cinnamon. I think I used. These ones that are super strong, antibacterial, have to be diluted, right? Because, especially like clove, because clove's really good as an analgesic in the mouth, but if it's straight, it can burn also. Um, there was at least 1 or 2 other ones, but those are the main ones that are coming to mind.
It seems like cinnamon, if I recall correctly, we've used that in Hawaii as an insect repellent. So, like in cabins out in the woods, you just basically put cinnamon in the corners, when you're deep in the jungle, and that works. That keeps the ants out, that keeps centipedes out, and maybe there's a universal principle at work there. Maybe it also neutralizes the sting.
It's fascinating. And then cinnamon really great for normalizing blood sugar too. Such a powerful, potent friend cinnamon is.
It's one of the great ones. There was a guy, Bernardo Lapallo. I think he lived to be 114. He was in our community. He was in the raw food community and superfood community. And one of the things he lived on was cinnamon tea. He considered that one of the great longevity substances, which makes a lot of sense because as you get older, the tendency is towards more of a diabetic condition, sugar, metabolism problems, etc. And cinnamon neutralizes that. So I thought that was a cool insight. If you think about the general population, probably 40% of the population is heading that direction right now. And what would be the natural remedy? Cinnamon tea.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. I hadn't thought of it that way. Right on. Well, so
Yeah.
let me ask you this. Right, everything I do in my work with clients, students, is all about how to create vibrancy. Right, and my sort of greedy, holistic philosophy is that in order to have a vibrant, great life, we need to be hitting it on all fronts. From our physical vitality to our emotional well-being to our financial lives to the contributions we're making in the world to our spiritual lives, and that's really where it starts. What would you say is the most important, or one of the most important contributions to vibrant living?
Well, what one of them happened to me today. I don't know if it's the most important, but it's definitely important. And
Yeah.
so I was in the house. I was feeling like lethargic and kind of drowsy and sleepy. And I was like, I'm going outside. This is from being inside. And so I immediately went outside and started dealing with. We had we were filling up the pool in the back here. It had gotten low because we've been in quite a drought here, so there's been a lot of evaporation. And I just went out and started watering and immediately got into nature barefoot. That's why I got stung on the bottom of my foot, and it just completely changed that whole pattern. Gone. It disappeared completely, and that just tells us something about being lethargic, right? Let's say we're in a home that has processed air, and the air is basically stale. I mean, indoor air pollution is 5 to 10 times as bad as outdoor air pollution, sometimes worse.
Hmm.
And You just imagine breathing that in all day and you're just in this lethargic state. As soon as you go outside, you start training yourself to all the birds, the bees, the plants, the trees, everything that's going on in nature. You're, especially if you're barefoot, you're picking up the forces, the telluric forces or Schumann resonance that's coming out of the earth itself. You're under the heavens and the stars and the clouds and everything else. And it's just a way of immediately putting you back on track. It's adding or stacking the odds into your favor.
Yeah, nicely said. And you used, I think, if I heard you correctly, you used one of my favorite words as you were saying that. You said entrains you to, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So I use that word a lot in various different ways. What's your definition? How do you use it?
Okay, so I would use it in the context of like frequency. So the higher frequency, you'll be entrained to the higher frequency. So if there's competing frequencies, the higher frequencies will entrain you to them or pull or draw them to you into resonance with them. And so I kind of see it as a resonance phenomenon, right? Entrainment is resonance. How about
Yeah.
you?
Awesome. Well, so yeah, it's very much the same, right? Like so much of what I do is about vibration. I've got a program called Living the Vibration of Vibrancy, and so in that we talk a lot about doing a inward process to resonate or entrain to whatever it is we want to live, experience, create in our lives. And so I think of it, entrainment as just any two bodies that, because every body has a vibration, right? Everything, every imagination has a vibration to it. When they come into proximity, they align to the same vibration, right? That's what it is. And it's funny, for years I said, and back when I was leading transformational breath, I would say, when any two bodies come into physical proximity, then they entrain. And I've had to untrain myself from saying that because now I realize they don't have to be in physical proximity. They just have to be in connection. They just have to be, in a quantum sense, entangled. And if they have that, which is amazing because then we can imagine, think about something, and we are automatically entraining to it for good or to our own detriment also.
Right, that makes sense. Now, is that a rooster that I'm hearing in the background? I was like, is that a rooster? Oh, there we go. That's what it is. Feels like we're in Hawaii, but you are in Hawaii, and that's part of it. Now, one of the things I've been doing, Daniel, is I've been doing a lot of this, right? I've been going and playing a lot of this stuff. And what I've noticed about any instrument, but I'm a drummer, so it's this instrument that's the primary teacher for me, is that if I watch somebody play, I immediately start playing like that, and I immediately am capable of playing the things that they're playing if I'm able to watch them. So there's different learning abilities that we have. It depends on you as a person. Like for me, when it comes to music, I need to hear it and I need to see it. And if I see the way that the person's doing it, then I immediately start picking up those habits. Some people, they need to feel it. They've got to be there right next to that person. They got to feel it. There's different ways that we learn. And so there's different strategies that we need to use for ourselves. Now, one of the things that's happened in our culture is that there's been an enormous surge of information, video information that's gone online in the area of music. So we are seeing people being able to play, like there are young girls now just ripping up Randy Rhoads licks all over the place on guitar. Young girls, 7-year-old girls, 8-year-old girls, like that. It's got that crazy because they can see it and they can hear it, and oftentimes they have a good teacher so they can be right there and feel it too. And this is all in online for the most part, and this is causing a major change in music. I spent about 5 days this week playing a lot of music with my friend Dr. Dave. Dr. Dave's most well known for his work on telomeres and longevity and stem cells. And as a hobby, he's a guitarist. So we met 10 years ago, at least, at a longevity conference, and we just became friends. And over the years, he's been getting more and more and more into guitar, and I've been getting more and more into drums. And he likes the kind of metal music that I grew up with, like the Ozzy Blizzard of Oz and Crazy Train and Don't Ask Me, I Don't Know, and all that other stuff. And so we've been playing that stuff, and it has been epic. I mean, just incredible. But we've also been researching. We've been seeing, like, look at this young girl. She's 21 years old. She's ripping it up. I mean, I'm talking ripping it up better than any guitarist I even knew about in 1985. That shows you the power of entrainment.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the way in our culture now, in the world we're living in, information is expanding so much. it's so much easier to access that kind of stuff. So what you alluded to something there that I also share about and teach about, and I think actually going back 25 years, maybe something like that, is when I first heard of NLP was from you, right? When we were hanging out on the raw food train, and so what you spoke about, another way of saying it, I think, is sensory modalities or different types of learning. And absolutely, people have different ways of doing it, different proclivities, natural ways. Will you say a bit more about that? How do you work with it?
You have to find out which one is the right one for you. How do you learn things? That's very important. Some people need to see it. Some people need to see it and hear it. Some people need to feel it. They need to be in the room with the person that's doing the yoga or playing the drums or playing the guitar, or whatever they're doing. And you have to find that for you. You know that great Socratic saying, know thyself. Well, this is really one of the key discoveries of our time. I picked it up originally at Super Camp when I was 14 years old, and it was a big part of the 10 days that we spent up there in Bear Valley, California. And it was almost a miraculous discovery. I was like, whoa, I'm basically an auditory learner. That's what I found out. I wasn't really a visual learner, but now see all these years of listening to the drums. Now when I see it and hear it, it's a whole nother thing. I mean, this is amazing. What's happening with the audio, and we're going through a revolution actually in music and almost anything else that's related to people who are auditory and visual learners due to the online learning.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's super cool. I didn't know you went to Super Camp. I Years ago when I was in Bali also, I discovered Super Camp and the way they work with accelerated learning methodologies, and it's amazing. I mean, amazing what we can do to accelerate our learning to get better at stuff. Yeah, that's cool. It reminds me also of the Inner Game of Tennis, right? Incredible book which influenced me a lot in teaching yoga and coaching people. And the importance of, and this connects to entrainment as well as the sensory modalities, who we surround ourselves with, right? You know, if we want to learn something, well, we got our teacher down the street, maybe great, or we've got like somebody who's world class that we might be able to access on YouTube or someplace in 5 minutes. That's amazing.
It's crazy. Like, you know, I curate my feed, let's say on Instagram. So if I turn on Instagram right now and am I going through my feed, drummers will come up playing certain sections of songs, and I'm able to see that every day. I mean, think of how crazy that is. To Beethoven wasn't able to study with Wagner or any of these other people. I mean, he was like the guy in his time. And so he was just a natural genius, and he naturally brought it all through. But imagine what he could have been. Imagine if he had YouTube. Imagine if he had Instagram. Imagine if he had the internet, right? And this is what's happening now. And there are people out there. Again, this next wave of musicians, just use that as an example. It's also true of filmmakers. It's also true of storytellers. It's also true of yogis. It's true of everything. This next wave is just, this is revolutionary, because again, I've been following, for example, female guitar players who are playing everything. They can play any Marty Friedman lick. They can play any Jason Becker lick. They can play any Randy Rhoads lick. They can play any Dokken, George Lynch, anything, easy and clean. It's like, what's going on? But this is again true of every direction. Now, this is kind of interesting as it feeds back into what I think is happening in the world right now. What's happening in the world right now is we're reaching virtuoso levels in so many areas that we're starting to look at the systems that we're living in, the political systems that we're living in, the medical systems that we're living in, and they're completely corrupt and antiquated, and they need to be updated. And the system doesn't want to update, because it's entrenched corruption. It's like a mafia. It's like a gang. And this is why we're getting the types of insanity that we're getting right now, because we're going through a great awakening. It's obvious. It's real clear. And so the powers that be are like, not on my watch. There ain't gonna be great awakening. I got my $1 billion and you ain't getting it, or whatever their thought pattern is. The control usually has to do with control issues or greed issues, or the desire to poison in some way. This is kind of this like sociopathic and psychopathic behaviors. And so that's why it's all happening right now. Because everybody asks me all the time, like, why is all this stuff happening right now? This is why. It's exactly the reason why.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm with you on that, and that begs a really interesting question for me, which is I know you, especially in the last couple of years, have dived pretty deeply into I don't know examining what is happening in the world and uncovering corruption, and there's a lot of just nastiness that's been going on, and I think in a really divided world, whichever side people are on or whatever their perspective, everybody's going to agree on that. Like there's some nastiness that's happening, and you've dived really deeply into it. You've exposed yourself a lot to it, and yet from the way you speak and how I know you, you maintain a very optimistic viewpoint of the world, this evolution of what's happening. Is that fair to say that you maintain that? And if so, how do you do it?
Right on. Thanks. I'm definitely this is the most optimistic time ever. Actually, we're feeling now the end of the Kali Yuga for real. This is really the end of a 5,000-year age of darkness, and therefore everything's getting revealed. That's what the apocalypse means. Everything's getting revealed. We're getting to see it all. And what will come out of this is systems that prevent corruption from occurring at the tops of corporations, systems that prevent corruption in financial institutions, systems that prevent corruption in politics. We weren't clever enough to develop those systems in the past. They were like the founding fathers of America were pretty clever. They had some pretty good ideas. There's been some really good ideas that came out of the Native American tribes of North America, and we could say that probably of all systems all over the world. There were some great ideas. Now it's time to bring it even to some better ideas, because now we've seen that, like, oh, we had some great ideas, but corruption still infiltrated, and that's what's going to come out of all this. So there will be Abraham Lincolns and George Washingtons and Susan B. Anthony's and all these people that will come in the future that will be way beyond those ones, way beyond. Like they were actually the prototypes for the great beings that are coming into the earth now, and these beings will develop systems of freedom that will automatically keep people who want power from getting power. Right. And we see those right now being set up, like in cryptocurrencies. You can see the decentralized cryptocurrency world is governed in a decentralized way. And that's a beautiful thing to see. And we're going to see more of that going in the future. But the old system probably doesn't want to give up very easily. As I think we're seeing, they're trying every psychological trick. They're trying every dirty trick. It's a gasp. And in the next 100 years, it's gone. It's going to be over for them. And we're heading towards just more awareness, better times ahead, more glory, more music, more creation. And then the locus of that freedom, that liberty, those developments may move around. There's parts of it will be developed in Africa, parts of it will be developed in Russia, parts of it will be developed in the Ukraine, parts will be developed in China, parts will be developed in Japan, some in the US, some in South America. It will move around. It won't just be in one place. And that's kind of a cool development. So that's the world that we're heading into.
Nicely said. Yeah, there is a ton of reason to be optimistic, to see where things are going in a positive way. I'm glad you brought up cryptocurrency, because for me, as you were describing the falling apart of the antiquated, broken, corrupt systems and the new systems coming into place, to me, that's one of the most obvious examples, because it's largely already here. I mean, there's a lot of growth and a lot of it to be developed, but wow, that's revolutionary, incredibly positive. And I got another question, but first I'll just overlay one piece on what you said. I keep coming to a lot lately. I'm sure you've seen this image. There are a bunch of different videos on YouTube about when you take a vibration plate and you put sand or metal filings on it or something, and then you put a certain frequency on it and it's vibrating in a certain frequency. Right, and what happens is those filings or pieces of sand, they'll come to a certain order, a certain shape, and it will be organized and symmetrical, right? And everything's stable at that point. And then if you increase the frequency, right, it's like it starts to shake. It's like holding on, then blah, it goes apart into this like complete chaos. And and of course that happens in our own lives when we go through things. We have challenges. It's like, now I feel really horrible. Well, that's because chaos, and that can be because we're raising our vibration. And then at a certain point, the filings, right, will reorganize to a new shape, a new order. It's more complex, it's more beautiful, and it will stabilize for a time until the frequency changes again, right? And it feels to me like we're collectively in one of those, like, we're going to a different vibration, call it evolution of consciousness or whatever. And yeah, it's like it's wanting to hold on, but it's not going to be able to, of course. Right.
That brings us back to this idea of resonance and entrainment. There's another term that's really important, which is called phase shift. Phase shift. So for example, when you have like cosine and sine, like if one's ahead of the other like that, then they're out of phase, but if they're both together, then they're in phase. And that's a very important concept in radionics and other forms of interesting healing strategies that use energy healing from a distance. So for example, like a lot of times you've seen my little device, my little radionics device, where I put my hand in one side and it copies all my frequencies into all of the, let's just say, I've got right here, I've got one of my favorites actually. I've got some Dragon Jing right here. And so what I like to do is I like to take these, I just bought this from Ron Tea Garden, and this doesn't have any of my frequencies in it. I want to copy my frequencies into this before I even ever take it. And that is, we call it radionics, but radionics is like a bad word according to like, the old antiquated system. So maybe you're going to call it, bring it into phase with you or resonance with you. And this stuff, I first became aware of this stuff working over 20 years ago in New York. You remember when I had that place in New York, and mosquitoes would come in the summer, and we'd go catch them and put them in a bag, and we'd put the antidote, we'd put the mosquitoes, like 7 mosquitoes was usually what it took. You put 7 mosquitoes in a bag in one side, and then you do the antidote frequency of the mosquitoes into a bottle of water, a spray bottle of water. And then you go around, you spray the apartment, and those mosquitoes go right out the window. They just can't be in that environment with the radionic frequencies or the resonant frequencies that basically push them totally out of phase, right? So you either want to go, if I'm going to consume something, I want it totally in phase. If I want to get rid of something, I want it completely out of phase.
It's amazing. I remember almost 30 years ago when my breathwork teacher started speaking about what we were doing as vibrational medicine, right? And she said that, and I was like, oh, don't say that. It just makes it sound all new agey and airy-fairy, and I wasn't comfortable with it at the time. And, a few years later, I'm like, oh, yeah, everything is vibrational medicine. Everything is frequency. And it's like such an exciting era we live in now because it's becoming so much more readily available, both the knowledge and the tools for how to implement it and take advantage of it. So that brings another question then. I'm glad you brought that up. What do you think, right? Because you're an incredible experimenter and developer, researcher and developer of using external substances, right? Like Ron Teagarden's medicine that you just brought forward there, and products of your own, and all kinds of products, right? And I love that. That was one of the most fun things when we were working together is, we got these amazing olives from Peru. We got, the spirulina from here, this bee pollen from us. What do you think about the interplay between using an exogenous substance coming from the outside versus creating the frequency oneself on the inside?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like we have to do both. It's part of being incarnated on the earth. And as you get older, you have to spend more time creating it on the inside. And that, to me, I spent a lot of time researching why that is, right? One obvious reason that is because, and just that way everyone can see, is that you can't process food the way you could when you're 20 years old as when you're 50 years old. It's just not the same. And the reason why that is because Rudolf Steiner, to me, really had the real answer to that. He just says you can't generate the forces, maybe the enzymes, whatever you want to call it, to take that external substance and internalize it and make it part of your being. And so what happens is the material starts to be toxic. And so you can't actually eat as much food as you get older. It's just not possible. Now, what ends up happening is that you have to then, as you age, spend more time fasting and create the substances within yourself. to
Interesting.
digest and eat. And I've spent a lot of time, at least the last 4 years, hardcore, 4 fasts a year, pretty much over the last 4 years on that particular thing of like, okay, let's get into this here and feel into this. And is this really true? And the answer is, yeah, it's definitely true. You can create everything inside your body that you need, no question about it. We're definitely overfed for sure, especially for our age, and we have plenty. And that's why you actually have to take it on as a discipline. Otherwise, you just escape with the same patterns you had when you were 20 or 30, and it's your body can't handle the substances. It's too many foreign substances. Your body says, "Look, I don't know what you're doing, but we can't handle all this," and it's going to break down the organism if we keep going with it.
Yeah, cool. Nicely said. And I'm with you. I think both is useful. Both are useful. I like my approach to life is I feel like I am a optimalist, like as in let's optimize the situation. Let's use everything as long as it's helpful for us and not harmful for others. So, yeah, every day I go inside and work on my vibration, my frequency, what I want to resonate with and entrain to. And I'm also aware of what I consume, whether that's food and drink or media or the vibrations of other people, because that all makes a difference too. Um, so
You brought up an idea that I wanted to talk about, which is getting a lot of press right now, and we've never seen so much press on this idea. It's booming right now, which is the idea of microdosing, the idea of psychedelic plants, the idea of psychedelic fungi. It's become a massive, massive part of society. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people I run into are like, "Hey, what do you think about microdosing psilocybin? Is it good? You think I
What do you
should
think
keep
about?
doing it? Or yeah, and I already know, right? So as soon as they started, they've been doing it. They've probably been doing it for months at this point, on and off, figuring it out. And psychedelic plants in general, why is there such a psychedelic revolution now? Right, in the last 100 years, it's exploded. Why now? Because this is the end of the Kali Yuga. It's the end of the Kali Yuga. And so what these things are doing is entraining you or putting you into phase or showing you where the door is so you can get back to those states of consciousness that are natural and spiritual for a human being that we lost during the Kali Yuga. That's what it is. I'm convinced of that. The evidence is plain for everyone to see. Now, does that mean you need to do psilocybin every day? No, doesn't mean that at all. Like at this point, I don't. I appreciate psilocybin being there, but I personally can't even take it anymore. I can't even consume it, not even microdose it. My body just rejects it. I appreciate the doors it's shown me, the insights, the places it's taken me. Those can never be taken away from me, but I know I can get there without that fungi now. Maybe I overstayed my welcome. I think I did too much, and I appreciate all the experiences, but I'm happy to get there without that now. And that's the purpose of it too, is that there's a time for it and there's a time not for it. And when it's not the time, you still know where those doors are because it took you there.
absolutely, well said. I'm with you. It's phenomenal where we are with it right now. How much it's coming into the mainstream. Like Michael Pollan's book, that was like 5 years ago now, maybe. Um, and How to Change Your Mind, right? And there's so many people, well-known public people, even ones that I would think of as fairly mainstream, are just openly saying, "Yeah, I'm doing this. I'm microdosing that." And as far as I know, it's still illegal in some states in the U.S.
Most states.
Right. So, which is fascinating, right? Because these people that are, luminaries and famous in in many cases, are openly saying it, without fear, as far as I can see, and apparently with impunity, and that's pretty cool.
That is a really cool development, right? You could imagine a time maybe in the 1930s where they're knocking on your door, right? They're like, what are you doing? What are you telling people to do? Such things have evaporated. They can't. That's over. Those days are over, and they just retired naturally. That's what's so beautiful about it. We don't even if somebody's microdosing, they're never thinking the cops are coming to the door and carrying them away. It's not coming up anymore, and that's kind of what's going to happen to all of this stuff. all the tyrannical mandates. Remember the tyrannical whole thing against cannabis, so the reefer madness and all of that. Now luckily we've gotten to a point now where they've just decriminalized the whole thing for the most part. Obviously still at the real institutional stuck old levels. It's still, like the federal government of the United States are still, no, it's illegal and all that. But eventually it'll be over. And what will also be over is the control of hemp for other things like building materials and all the amazing things you can do with hemp, right? It's the best carbon trap. It's the best paper. It's the best building. There's nothing better than hemp bricks. There's nothing better than hemp stucco. And it just goes on. I mean, I was at a hemp building event a few months ago. It was fantastic right here in Texas. And it was just so cool to be in the building. The building breathes. So it stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter, but the air doesn't get trapped. You don't feel a staleness at all. It's just beautiful. So all of those things are coming too, and they'll kind of happen automatically. All of a sudden, there won't be any attention on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's just to go back for a minute with the psychedelics and the microdosing and the way that's coming in, so rapidly and big time into the popular culture right now. That's very much, one, like we were talking about before, of the old systems breaking down. Also very much like cryptocurrency and the power of the decentralization of that, right? Because there are so many voices speaking about psychedelics in a positive way that you can't stop it because there's so many voices everywhere speaking about it, and those systems are gradually breaking down. There's always those who are ahead that are shouting, "Hey, this is the way we do things now," and the old ones are like resisting and saying, "No, no, 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 but we did it the old way." So, all right, two things I want to go to. One is, since you mentioned about fasting before. And I did the kind of cleanse that you're working with now with you, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. And that was revolutionary for me. That was the first time I'd gone on an extended period with just water, right? And it changed things for me in a big, big way. And since then, I've been doing a lot more of them regularly. So you're still doing those cleanses periodically, and people can participate in those. Is that true?
That is correct. We've got one coming up September 6th through the 20th, 2022. Depends on if you catch this, before that or not. And then we do add that bonus extra week, which is the 20th to the 27th, to do the water fasting for anybody who wants to join us on that. And those first 2 weeks, we're just showing people how to cleanse. We're showing people how to gradually bring their calories down, how to go to one meal a day, how to go plant-based, how to make sure that you're staying hydrated. So we're drinking. That's one of the big ones, I have to say. The last 4 years, all the fasting I've been doing, the water fasting, has shown me how little water I'm actually drinking. So I have majorly upkept my water living this far south in Houston, because otherwise you just can't make it. It's just, I've learned that in Hawaii too. You have to drink lots of water, even a gallon, 4 liters of water every single day to really be at the level that you need to be. But I learned that as a real strong lesson from fasting, because when you're fasting, you actually do meet your water needs. And when you're not, you go, "Oh, I'll just eat instead," or "I'll just drink this juice instead." But really what your body wants is water.
Absolutely. And one of the most important ways I think of that is because we're an electrical system, right? And just like a battery, if it doesn't have water in it, or anything, if it doesn't have water in it, water is a conductor of electricity. And if we don't have water in us, we short circuit, we lose energy. And I want to respond to what you said about the way you're leading that cleanse. It's so valuable, right? And even for me, like I've been cleansing and fasting for 20 something years. And then when I did it with you 3 years ago, I was like, oh, it never occurred to me to like gradually decrease my calories, to do it in this sort of methodical way, to gently and intentionally enter into this. And of course, yeah, the water part is optional for people. That makes good sense. And so many people I know never get into fasting or cleansing because, well, they don't know how, and it seems scary, and there's so much misinformation out there about it. So I love that you're leading people in a gentle way with it.
It's really amazing. If we've tried every iteration of this, by the way, over the years. Those retreats where we'd do the Love Your Liver retreats, where we'd get people to bring their calories down, and then we'd do a liver cleanse, or we'd do 11 days in Costa Rica, and then we were doing massive amounts of colonics and enemas, and immediately go into a water fast, or just did all kinds of iterations of this kind of thing. And I found that over the years, the best way that's not too short, not too quick, but it's not too long, is 1 week of good prep to get off of food. 1 week, then you're 100% on liquids, and then you're bringing your calories down, and then boom, you're ready. When day 15 shows up, you've done just the right amount of time to prepare your body. And then, my friends have told me over the years, and many people in the cleanses have told me over the years, that they had never done a single day of water fasting in their life until they got to day 15. All of a sudden, it was easy. And they got through day 15, day 16, day 17, 3 days of water fasting, never done it, never thought they had the discipline to do it. I get that all the time. My friend Justin Bua is a famous painter. He for years he was like, nope, not the discipline. Nope, can't do it. There's no way. My metabolism too fast. No, can't do it. It's like, dude, you got to do it. And so finally he did it. Did the 3-day water fast easily. I think he may have done 4 days.
Yeah, that's powerful. Super cool. All right, so this is a little bit of a departure, but still in that general realm we've been discussing about the breaking down of old systems, the new era coming in. I had an experience recently. It was before the current war that's happening was going on, or it was just starting. I was visiting in Puerto Rico, and so I was there with my daughter, and we had like a free morning, afternoon. So we're like cruising around Old San Juan, checking it out. And one of the features of that town is they've got these two big old forts, right? And they're, and they've turned them, because it's a territory, the U.S. has turned them into essentially museums or national something or others. So we went and we had a tour through it, and it was fascinating, right? Because we're walking through the thing, the walls like this, and it was like old school forts with the, where you fire the cannon through here, and I could just imagine, like, oh yeah, there's boats out there, and the boats are like, shooting not bombs, I guess cannonballs was our version of bombs then, and they're coming over here, and I was sitting there, and and this was from 500, 600, 700 years ago was when that was going on there, and I was like, golly, I mean, we're just so primitive human beings, like that somehow we conceived that was a way to behave, a way to do things, like killing each other en masse and bombing each other. Like, that's so ridiculous. And then of course I was like, oh yeah, that's happening now. That's still happening, right? And as we evolve, what's your perspective? Can we evolve out of violence?
Yes, we definitely can. I mean, this is something that I feel is really appropriate today, because in the old days, liberals were against wars. Now they've been pulled into, like, this is like, the Democrat Party, the liberal party, is like been pulled into, nope, we're going into this war. Not that the Republicans aren't for it too, but for the most part, there's more resistance to the Republican Party, shockingly. And so things are shifting around, big shifts, which is good. That's telling us that these old patterns are breaking up. And that's a good sign. So eventually people will realize what this is about. What this is about is to keep the entrenched powers, especially the financial powers, the centralized bankers, in place, right? They don't want anything disrupting their power. So they have a problem with centralized banking, which is eventually there's too much debt that's created when the money's created, right? So all the money we have today is created with a debt attached to it. That's not the way it's supposed to be created. The way money is created is, like, let's say you're over on your side of the river and I'm on my side. I've got durians on my side. On your side, maybe you have Rollinia. And I'd like to, eventually trade with you, some durians for Rollinia. And I'm sure you'd like some durians.
Yeah, I would. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so then we build a bridge over that river, and that river represents a value that we've created. And we could suddenly create anything. We could say, let's take any scarce resource, wampum, right? We could create cacao beans and say, hey, the cacao beans, we'll say 200 cacao beans now correlates to that bridge. That's the value. And then later, let's say we put a road in. Okay, we'll say 100 cacao beans is for that road, another 100 cacao beans for that road. This is how economies are generated. And we just take a scarce resource and attach it to the infrastructure. or the creation, things that we've created. The way it's done today is, oh, we're going to borrow the cacao beans. It's totally makes no sense. So what happens then is that eventually it's musical chairs. There's more money that's demanded back by the bankers lending out than there is money in the system. That's why the banks are always the biggest buildings in the middle of cities and all of that. And eventually what happens is that card game, that musical chairs game runs out for them because there's no more moves left. This is what's happening in Europe. It's going to cascade over here. And it's a usury and banking problem. And so what they'll do is they'll create a war to masquerade that problem and then reset the money system and say, oh, we're getting rid of all the debt, the $40 trillion, which is all fake. There's no debt. It's the money was lent out at a debt that shouldn't even have been there. We created it. Look at how much infrastructure we have. Look at all this infrastructure. I've got all kinds of books here. Look at this window over here. I've got all this stuff. I've got these computers, all these communication devices. There's more created stuff than it's almost unimaginable. That means there should be more money than is imaginable. We could all live in abundance, but the bankers say, no, we are the only ones who control the money and you have to come get it from us. That system will be broken up by us discovering it, and the way that they try to masquerade that and try to block people from discovering it is to create a war as a front game. And so this is, mark my words on this, is the real reason for the Ukraine war. Has nothing to do with what we're being told, has nothing to do with Putin's aggression. We could just say the Ukrainians were just as aggressive in the Donbass over the last 8 years with the war they were fighting there against the Russians. I mean, it's just made up who's in the right. I mean, the Ukraine's the most corrupt country in the world. Russia's the second most corrupt of the major industrialized countries. So, we can't say one's right or the other. But at any rate, this is all a masquerade that's been developed by the world bankers to get away from their money problem and to develop a new Bretton Woods, which is they want to push in their centralized digital currency and then have total control. And what do we want? We want decentralized. We're trying to go the other way. And that's an important thing to realize in the dynamics of what's happening here so that we don't get pulled in. Once we get that dynamic understood as the human race, that the bankers have been causing all these major catastrophic wars, World War I, World War II, the Civil War in the United States, and many other wars that have gone on through history, then the amount of violence on earth is going to go way down. And eventually then we can have symbolic battles where we say, hey, we're going to put our MMA fighter up against yours. We'll do it that way rather than just, these massive missiles and attacks and this crazy thing, land mines, and it's horrible. Eventually we'll get more clever about it. We'll do it as more of a bread and circus rather than an actual let's go kill each other thing.
Well said. Yes, I'm with you. And it's, there are those who have been profiting off violence and war forever, right? And I love the thing that Henry Ford said. I think of it often these days. It's just as well that most people don't understand how the financial system works, because if they did, we'd have a revolution by morning. And yes and no, because, well, maybe we need a revolution, or maybe we need a evolution that's a little bit slower, that doesn't involve everything being destroyed. Either way, it's coming, right?
It's coming. And I kind of see it. There's a real possibility through what we've seen with cryptocurrencies that it's going to happen naturally. Because if I don't need their money, like people are like, Bitcoin could be used for drug smuggling. It's like, and the US dollar couldn't? Like, what are you talking about? The US dollar has been used for more wars, drug smuggling, more problems, more violence than any currency in history. So if we switch away to other types of currencies, Bitcoin being the most obvious and the most well known, but we could even go, like, I'm meeting on what's today, Monday? I'm meeting on Wednesday with the guys at the Home Token, which is a worldwide community of people that are going to create a cryptocurrency that's for that community. And I can exchange value. I can say, hey, yeah, I'll take your stereo for 10 tokens, and you want this? Okay, yeah, you can buy it for 5 tokens. Once we're doing that, their whole money system's out the window. We don't even need it anymore. That's what's coming. So I suspect there might be a soft revolution that just eliminate it. We don't even need their thing because it's happening in so many places at once. They can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of points to that great aphorism that when somebody knows better, they do better, right? So if there's a better option available and that becomes obvious, well, people will go to the better option.
That's the cymatics that you were talking about. It looks like chaos, and all of a sudden we get into the other frequency, and everything goes back in this crazy, awesome pattern. That's coming, and we're in. You're right. We're in a phase shift. I think this is the time of one of the greatest phase shifts historically, and there's a dark side to that, and there's a light side to that. And the dark side, it's good to know the dark side or be aware of it, because that informs you of what the light side is, right? Knowing what evil is helps you decide, which way you're going and what the good is. So that's why, I've been looking, like, okay, who's in the right here? What's going on here? And I've waited out over many years, and I've come to some conclusions that have caused me to say, you know what, I'm on this side now.
Yeah, nice. I'm with you. There's another expression that's come to me a lot lately, a Chinese sage saying, which is, if you want the truth, just let go of your opinions, right? um, and so that brings me, maybe I'll ask you one more thing. I want to get your take on this, and then probably good we wrap it up. But you mentioned the word evil, and this we're in August already now, and I'm going to share what we're speaking about with my community soon. And the theme that I'm sharing about in this month is gurus, right? Gurus, teachers, villains, saints, lots of different perspectives on it. And a friend of mine who is considers herself a moral philosopher, and rightly so, she asked me the question the other day, is evil necessary in the world? So here I am teeing up for you that question, as well as what's your perspective on gurus?
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, I guess I got to probably split that up into two parts. That's such a great question. And thanks for that. In my opinion, in this dimension that we're in, at the state of consciousness that we're in, with the evil, first of all, evil is parasitic. It doesn't create anything. Rudolf Steiner talked about two forms primarily of evil. One is escapism and false idols and false light, gurus, in certain perspectives. And the other one is the materialism, the algorithm thinking, the technocracy, using technology for evil. That those two, they're strange attractors. They're black holes. They pull humanity into deep-seated troubles, because what they're doing is they're stripping away everything that is not us, actually, right? So let's say somebody goes, I'm going to be a businessman, I'm on Wall Street, I'm going to make all this money and do all this other stuff, and I'm going to just, I'm going to get my yachts and all this kind of thing. Ultimately, what ends up happening is that is an imprint on their soul that takes them off track from moving their soul evolution to a higher phase, a higher calling, to create for God, to create for the future, to create for the infinite, to help up level everybody at once, right? Because it suddenly becomes me. He called that the Ahrimanic materialism, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's a Western karma. The Eastern karma is kind of, and this is not mutually exclusive. There's Eastern karmas playing their way out here in North America, but the Eastern karma is more of I'm going to escape. I'm going to give my power away. The guru is going to tell me what to do. And that's a false light. And that's drug addictions, drugs and alcohol. That's giving our power away over to a guru, and then suddenly they walk off with their couch, or we find out, like, Sadhguru. I like some of the things he said, but he's there with Klaus Schwab saying, yeah, the planet's overpopulated. How do we know that? We don't know the planet's overpopulated. That's a ridiculous statement. That's just one of these aphorisms that's been blasted into our minds all our lives, that there's problems with humans. Humans are a problem, and there's too many of us. Who says who? There's no problem with any. There's not. I don't buy any of that. So I saw that. I was like, oh no, he could be one of those kind of like fake gurus, So that I see that. So the evil of those two things, those two strange attractors of troubles, strip away from us everything that is not the creative soul, the creative heart, the cosmic Christ within, which is moving forward. So they're good. Actually, right? So the evil is actually playing a really good role. How many times have you had somebody in your life, or you've known somebody who was a drug addict? They almost killed themselves with drugs, and they saved themselves and came out a better person. How many times have you known somebody who was a Western business person? There's me, and they realized that's a dead end, and they came back a better person, right? That's why we have evil in the world. It's because it's actually helping us to evolve. It points the way and says, hey, that way, go there. And that way to me is always into the heart.
Beautiful. Nicely said.
Thanks.
Right on. So, and a thing that we didn't speak about that that you want to say to our communities?
Well, I think one of the things that I really make a daily practice is I try to fit in as many things into each day as possible. So when I get up in the morning, I make sure I have my water. We talked about water and charcoal in the morning. Well, I do water, sea salt, charcoal, and lemon or lime in the morning, every morning, and I just make that a pattern. And there's certain things like that that if you're on a healthy lifestyle, spiritual oriented lifestyle, that you just try to fit it in every day, you know. And sometimes you get thrown off track, and that's how life is. And sometimes you have to get off track on purpose because you don't want to get too into that materialistic, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that mindset. Sometimes you just have to get into the holy flow. But this idea of living a spiritual life to me is about the moment to moment intention, the moment to moment intention. And that to me is, you know, the more power, the more creative force, the more will you get into that moment to moment intention. That's where the real juice is in a healthy and happy lifestyle.
Boom, nicely said. You know, it's hilarious that you say that because a couple hours ago I was in the midst of my now daily coffee enema, which is for me one of the best times to read. And I'm reading, I can't believe I never read this book before, The Personal MBA, right? Which is an amazing business book. And the part that I was just reading before we spoke, I don't remember who it was, but he said, wasn't Steve Wozniak, but it was somewhere around there, said, if you break your day into 10-minute increments and get as much as you can out of those 10 minutes, it'll radically change your life. And, you know, and I think that speaks well to what you're saying about being intentional and focusing on what matters in this moment. What am I creating? What am I energizing? What am I entraining to in this moment? It's super powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very powerful. That's where I kind of arrived after a lifetime of studying success books and success literature. Just bring it all into every moment. I was talking with Dandelion over here the other day, and we were talking about work all the day that you work. Every moment that you're working, work. Right? Don't be off somewhere else. Do what you're doing. It's such a cool meditation. It's a lot of fun too, right? When you're just completely in it. You're committed. And to me, that's always better than the idea of like, well, I'd rather be doing this and, you know, spacing out and going over here. It's like, no, you're there. Do it. Be it. Totally.
Absolutely. That's one of the main benefits of meditation is to cultivate the ability to stay present. Yeah. So, hey, if people want to get in touch with you, find out about what you're doing, the amazing products you sell, or join the cleanse, what's the best way?
Great place to find me is at davidwolfe.com, DAVIDWOLFE.com. And you can find me on the social media sites like Instagram, David Avocado Wolfe, DAVIDAVOCADOWOLFE. And you could find me, let's see, what's another good little platform? Frequencylifestyle.org. Frequencylifestyle.org. After a while, we found out that this energy business works. So we were like, let's create a website that's really about that. And that's frequencylifestyle.org.
Right on. Cool. Well, my friend, my brother, so good to get a chance to rap with you today. And I appreciate you generously giving this time and so that we can offer it up to others. Thanks, man.
Fantastic. Hey, I'm going to flip it back to you. I want to get all your details because I'm going to send this out to my audience as well. How do people find more about Daniel Aaron? And then if you could tell us about your book.
Oh yeah, thanks. Well, yes, we are the brothers of 5-letter first names and last names. So same for me, DanielAaron.com, and that's AARON, or as we might say, AARon.com. That's one of the best ways. And I'm also on your favorite social platform, be it YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. Can find me there. Just Daniel Aaron or Daniel Aaron Unlimited. And my book, thanks for asking. Yeah, you touched on a few things that I go to. It's called The Art of Spiritual Leadership, 40 Laws to Transform Your Life and the World. And as you were speaking about the benefit of evil or the purpose it serves in the world, I have a chapter in here called Rock Bottom, right? And in that chapter, I tell a lot about various places where incredible luminaries hit their bottom. and the incredible benefits that brought them in their lives from getting that contrast and saying, yeah, this isn't me, this isn't who I am, I'm going that way. So yeah, thanks for asking. It's a fun adventure, the book world.
Fantastic. Awesome. Just so awesome to spend some time with you. Thanks, bro.
Likewise. All right, aloha, y'all.